If you followed my videos, you know I offer a kit for a replacement bracket assembly that you can install in your OM 617 turbo diesel for this air cleaner housing assembly. It keeps breaking these factory brackets right here. And the bracket we sell is a much more robust bracket than the factory bracket, particularly in this area. This is the area that's prone to cracking. I've done some other videos on this. We take this bracket from the manufacturer, we put it in a jig, make sure it aligns properly, and then we add some wells, both here and on the back side, to strengthen it up. So if you want to eliminate this problem of constantly breaking your brackets for your air filter housing on your old OM 617 turbo, this is the bracket you want. Now, installation is not that difficult. We do provide some instructions, but just recently I decided to do an upgrade addition to this. When I installed this a couple months ago, I ran into a problem. Sometimes you can sneak these in. You've got two mounting holes here and one down here. This one's kind of tough to get to, but this is the oiler for your turbocharger. You cannot get this underneath this pipe, and you do not want to be tweaking on this and bending it up and deforming it, because putting that kind of stress on it could cause a leak right here at the turbo, and this can be a real disastrous leak if it's not caught while you're driving. What I'm going to do is now offer a gasket, because I've found it's much easier than fighting this bracket assembly. Just go ahead and remove these two bolts here and lift this pipe up enough. You're going to have to remove that 10mm bolt right there so that you can slide the bracket in and out. Now I'm going to include some aviation Permatex that you'll want to coat this paper gasket with when you reinstall it. And when you reinstall these bolts, use blue thread locker. I highly recommend you do that. So you can pull these two bolts, make sure you cover this area up so you don't get any dirt down into the turbo, and you just lift it up a little bit so you can take the old bracket out and sneak the new bracket in, and once you get the bolt started, you can use that new gasket and reconnect this oil feed line here. There's one bolt that's just a pain to get to, and that's this bottom one. I've got a couple tools that I use to get to that bolt on the bottom of this bracket, and I want to show you those now. This is a tool I use to get to that bottom bolt. I don't even know where I bought this, but it's really a unique kind of quasi-universal joint. You see the amount of flex in that spring, and at the same time this ball socket swivels. So I can line this up like this and go right underneath it. That's a 13mm headed bolt, and I can get the angle and get on this, see, with a long extension and get that bolt out. Then when I go to put the bolt in, I wrap masking tape around the head of the bolt and shove it in here so it won't fall out. And then I go back down in here to get that bolt started. Now, if you don't have this tool, and don't ask me where to buy that. This is probably something I've had for 20 years. But this is a good substitute. Watch this. If you have a universal joint, take your universal joint and wrap it with some electrical tape. Now, a standard universal joint is going to be a little bit too floppy to go down in there and get the alignment, because you have to have quite a bit of an angle. So if you put the tape on it like this, it'll hold the angle while you get the socket on that bolt. So this will function pretty much the same as the tool I just showed you, but you can now position that universal because of the tape, and it will hold position while you go back in there and get that socket on the head of that bolt. These little tips may really help you if you're fighting trying to get that one on and off. Now, some of you are going to say, well, Kent, what about these rubber shock mounts? They're constantly breaking on my car. Let me share with you a couple tips and maybe a couple reasons why they're breaking and how you can help extend the life on these rubber mounts here. The number one thing you can do to prevent premature failure of these rubber mounts is to make sure your diesel engine is running smoothly at idle. I've seen some of these engines shake so bad, it not only destroys these, but it destroys the motor mounts. So get your diesel tuned up. Sometimes if you don't have good compression on all cylinders, there's no way to tune out a bad shake other than possibly increasing the idle speed. We have a tool and instructions on my website on how to adjust the idle speed on these engines. But that's real important. Eliminate the shake if you want these mounts to last. Number 2, use these metal heat shields when installing new rubber mounts. If you don't put the heat shield on there, excessive heat coming up from the turbocharger is going to shorten the life of these rubbers. And number 3 is you need to make absolutely certain that the alignment of these 3 studs line up with the 3 holes in your air filter housing. I've seen instances where someone is going to put this air filter housing on, they get these 2 studs started through the holes, and then they pry on it to get this 3rd one lined up, and that's going to put a lot of side load stress. So you don't want any side load stress on these mounts when you drop that air filter housing on to the bracket assembly. So you may have to play with these. Remember, there are 2 holes in each arm. You can move this to that position, or you can move this one back and this one is forward. So you might have to play around with these. I would install the rubbers loosely and get that housing down on here and make sure the holes, the 3 holes in the housing, are lined up and it just drops on. Don't be pushing and prying that housing to get it to line up with the studs on these rubber mounts, or they're just not going to last. So if you're having problems with a rattly, shaky air filter housing on your old turbo diesel, I'll put some links below with some resources that are going to help you fix a broken bracket, replace the rubbers, and get rid of that annoying rattle sound in your old turbo diesel.